Joining me now are three of the best political analysts in the country. Here in New York, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Daily News, Michael Goodwin, syndicated columnist Miguel Perez, and in our Washington bureau, Gene Cummings, senior political correspondent for Politico.com. Thank you all for being here. You know, Michael, I'd like to start with you on this New York Times endorsement of Clinton and McCain. You're an alumnus. You worked for the Times.
I tell everyone I did my undergraduate work at the New York Times.
What do you think about the endorsement? And what do you think about the report that Bill just came out with?
Well, a couple of things. Obviously, the Times can endorse on its editorial page anybody at once. It obviously is not going to help McCain much, I think, certainly in Florida or places like that. I mean, it's such a liberal paper now that nobody who's not a liberal even reads it anymore, particularly the editorial page. But as for its attack on Giuliani, it was so vindictive and personal as to be, I think, unprofessional. And this follows a pattern of the Times now. When it likes or doesn't like somebody, it's front page, second page, third page, all the way to the editorial page. It's worse. It's as bad as Rupert Murdoch in his bad days.
Do you really think it's getting worse?
Absolutely.
Let's ask Gene. Gene.
Do I think it's getting worse? No, I don't think I'd embrace all of those, all of his thoughts. But I would agree with him on some, and that is that I don't think this necessarily helps McCain. You could see his own awkwardness when he was asked to speak about it. And the blowback towards Giuliani was strong enough that it did send a signal. And if you're a conservative Republican and they feel that strongly about you, then in fact he may be the candidate you want to consider. So that may have backfired in some way.
Let's read the New York Times quote. They had very harsh words for Mr. Giuliani. The real Mr. Giuliani, who many New Yorkers came to know and mistrust, is a narrow, obsessively secretive, vindictive man who saw no need to limit police power. Mr. Giuliani's arrogance and bad judgment are breathtaking. And Michael, this sort of goes to your point that they don't hold their punches on this. Miguel.
It's nothing about substance. There's no policy there. There's nothing about the presidential campaign. It's all about his mayoralty, which I think the verdict has been in on his mayoralty. Rudy Giuliani, in many ways, was a great mayor, as most New Yorkers recognize by the fact that they're still alive. The real estate values have increased, in part because of public safety. If I could add just one more thing, though, quickly on the notion of this being New York's hometown paper.
Right.
The New York Times is no longer a New York newspaper. It is a national newspaper. It sells about 200,000 papers in the 5 boroughs of New York. Both the New York Daily News, where I work, and the New York Post sells double or triple that number every day. So the Times is no longer representative of New York. It is at best a Manhattan newspaper.
All right. Miguel.
The attacks on Giuliani were vicious. I think that it was uncalled for. I didn't think they needed to go that far. But the question here is, how much does this editorial help McCain? And I don't think it helps him very much because, you know, they had 2 editorials. They had an editorial favoring Hillary Clinton, and it was obvious from reading the 2 of them that they are for Clinton, not for McCain. They reluctantly endorsed McCain because they said he was the best of the pack among the Republicans. But it was very obvious that they don't like McCain either.
Yeah, well, as Bill Schneider reported, it isn't exactly their turf. McCain turf isn't exactly New York Times turf. Let's go to Hillary Clinton. She has come back to South Carolina after doing a lap through the Super Tuesday, some of the Super Tuesday areas. Now, if she trails Barack Obama by about 6 to 8 points in the latest polls in South Carolina, where are we here with this? And is she managing expectations a bit by saying, oh, perhaps it's not so important?
Well, that could be, but I think it's extremely important for Obama.
Yes.
And I think the expectations are that he would win and win pretty handily. So if she makes it a narrow defeat even, or should pull it off, I think he's severely damaged going forward.
No question about it. Obama has to do really, really well in South Carolina. Otherwise, he's doomed, because from here on out, I mean, she's really getting ready for February 5th. She's been going around to all the states, and she's really getting ready for that. So he really has to make a huge impact now so that he can carry that momentum into February 5th.
It's clear from the travel schedule that's where she's putting her focus. Gene.
Well, I think that 6 to 8 margin in the polls is not necessarily good news at all for Barack Obama, because we've seen the polls are pretty volatile this year. But I do think that his campaign learned a searing message in New Hampshire when they were ahead in their poll, very much ahead in the polls, and got perhaps overconfident. Her people came out in bigger numbers than expected. They were disappointed with some of the turnout from their own troops. I don't think we're going to see that mistake again. But it could be that Barack Obama gets a little bit lucky in South Carolina with the continued candidacy of John Edwards, because he will peel some of the white vote away from Hillary Clinton.
You know, I should point out that in national polls, Hillary Clinton is ahead of Obama in the CNN poll of polls by about 10 points. So we have Clinton at 43%, Obama at 33%, and Edwards at 13%. But Jean, going back to what you mentioned, now Senator Edwards has remained in third place in this race. He's trying to stay out of the fighting that's been going on this week. The comment about being the only grown-up wing of the Democratic Party. Let's take a listen to what he said in South Carolina today.
And my own view about this is that this New York and Chicago style of politics of personal attacks and trying to tear down politicians, that South Carolina deserves better than that. And I am about building up the people of South Carolina, not about tearing down politicians.
Taking the high ground, but the old rule, if A attacks B, C benefits.
Right. Well, this is...
Jean, go ahead.
It's just amazing to me when you think back to the fall when John Edwards was clearly the attack dog, to the degree that a Democratic audience booed him in Nevada. And it was then that he stopped being the attack dog. So to come around now at the end, I mean, you go with what works for you. And in that last debate, he got a bump because he didn't engage, and so he's going with it now. If he needed to go the other way, he'd probably be doing that too.
What would a third place finish mean for John Edwards?
Well, you know, to pick up on what something Jean said, though, they're not going after him because he's not a threat. I mean, he's the odd man out here. He's not pulling anybody. So to the extent that he's not hurting them, they're not, why attack him? It's wasted ammunition.
Yeah.
I do think that what's most worrisome for Obama, and should be actually for the entire Democratic Party, is that the vote in South Carolina now is largely dividing along racial lines, with Obama getting as few as 10% in some of the polls among white voters. This really undercuts his biracial appeal that he's been projecting and that really has been the basis of his candidacy. And if the Clintons have succeeded in making him the black candidate only, then this really could be the end of his candidacy, but I think it's going to hurt them down the road.
Well, but the black voters in South Carolina are nearly half the voters, correct?
Yes, yes.
So this will translate into what
but turnout and everything else will matter too. So it's the white vote you have to watch. How much of the white vote does Obama get will be really significant.
Any thoughts before we
Bill Clinton is clearly the problem here. He's demonstrating that he's not the first African-American president in the country, and he's turning African-American voters off, I think. And I think that come the general election, what's going to happen is that he's going to hurt his wife, because a lot of people will not want to vote for Hillary if it's the team that's coming to the White House.
We'll pick it up there when we come back. We'll be right back with our panel right after the break. Also, Heroes, a severely wounded Iraq veteran, has new power legs. We'll show you the amazing technology that makes it possible. Stay with us.
You can't just sit behind a desk all the time and think you know what's going on in the world. You have to go out and see it for yourself.
Renewal by Anderson.
No one wakes up thinking, woohoo, I need new windows. Not because of the expense, it's because of the nightmare of finding a reputable company to do the job right. And your biggest fear, do I have to go through those high-pressure tactics from a salesperson I invited into my home? It doesn't have to be that way. Renewal by Anderson is the replacement window division of Anderson Corporation, the largest and oldest window company in the world. Our approach is different. We'll examine your windows, see if what you want done can be done. We'll give you an exact price in writing, and we'll guarantee it for 60 days. If we can't help, we'll try to guide you in the right direction. If we can, we will ask for your business, but rest assured we can take a no as gracefully as a yes. I know this because I'm not just their spokesperson. I'm part of the Renewal by Anderson family. As an added bonus, call today, purchase our windows now, and we'll pay your last month heating bill up to $500. Plus, pay nothing down, 0 interest, 0 payments till 2009. Call today.
Renewal by Anderson. We love our new windows.
I've been waiting for so long. Now I finally found someone to stand by me. We saw the writing on the wall as we felt this magical fantasy. Listen, baby, I've had the time of my
Save 50%. Call your travel agent or 1-800-SANDALS.
Here's what people are saying about Spamalot.
It's the best night out. And now for something completely different. Clay Aiken has joined the cast of Monty Python's Spamalot. Where else can you get big laughs, beautiful girls, a killer rabbit, and international superstar Clay Aiken all in one show? Why, it's spamtastic.
Order your tickets today.
Some of us think this is a very important piece.
Ringo sings Mary King Tonight.
We're back with Michael Goodwin, Miguel Perez, and Jean Cummings. You know, last night in Florida, the Republican candidates had their debate, and this about the Super Tuesday primaries. This is the last debate. Before that, there was a common theme. We've just strung it all together and listen.
Hillary Clinton. Senator Clinton. Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton. Senator Clinton. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton. The last thing America needs is sending the Clintons back to Washington.
Now, I guess the operative question are the Republicans banking on the fact that she's going to be the Democratic candidate, and is there an advantage in that in some way? Michael?
Well, I thought particularly for McCain, there was, in terms of the military. As I recall, McCain started it last night with the issue of Iraq and saying Hillary Clinton wants to surrender. And it came out of a last debate where the question to her was, what's more important, winning or getting out? She basically said getting out. So McCain has jumped on that she wants to surrender. And so I think he's kind of set the table. Also, she is winning in the Democratic race, it looks like anyway. So and she's an easy target. I mean, everyone kind of enjoys beating up on her. Yeah. So there's no harm to them.
Bill Schneider points out that the political disadvantages of being perceived as the front runner. So are they in fact setting her up as a front runner to take those disadvantages? Let's ask Jean.
Well, they've been looking to run against her since this race started. President Bush even signaled, and Karl Rove signaled, that they thought that she would be the one to win the nomination. And it's funny, for the last couple of weeks, they were suddenly asked about Barack Obama, and they all looked pretty uncomfortable because they didn't have full talking points on him. So they're back on message, the message that they have been preparing for quite some time.
All right, Miguel.
I think they want to run against the Clintons because obviously they see that there's a lot of problems in this teamwork that we were discussing earlier. But the whole thing last night, reminded me of the Democratic debate in Myrtle Beach when all the Democrats singled out McCain as the guy who they think they're going to be running against. So if we were to take a poll of all the Democratic candidates, it's obviously McCain. And if we were to take we took a poll of the Republican candidates in this debate, it's Hillary. So obviously, if we were to go by what they think, we know who's going to run in November.
The only exception I would have to that, though, is the notion that I think that they love to beat up on Hillary in front of Republican audiences. In fact, she beats most of them head-to-head in the polls right now. So using her as kind of red meat for Republican audience is one thing. Really wanting to run against the Clintons, I'm not sure. Yeah. It's a pretty powerful team, and Obama confuses them more and is more difficult, but ultimately is probably a weaker candidate. I think that's how they see it now.
Kira, and one last thing I'd add on that is that I think part of the choice that Republican voters are making is which one of these guys can beat Hillary Clinton. And so to start, displaying what they're going to use against her, what kind of language, how tough would they be, that might move some Republican voters their way if they are convinced, that's the one that can beat her.
Yeah, let's just put up the national CNN poll of polls for the Republicans, just in equal opportunity. McCain, we have at 26%, Huckabee 19%, Romney at 18%, and Giuliani at 14%. And there it is. So we just want to let our audience know what they are doing nationally.
I think that will change depending on what happens in Florida.
Yeah, so it's South Carolina is not the focus for you, or for many people, it's the Florida. Well,
I know. I mean, South Carolina is tomorrow. That's the big one for the Democrats. But just in terms of the Republican poll, I think Florida is going to determine who comes out of there, with a head of steam and more delegates. There's a lot of delegates at stake now in Florida.
That's right. Okay, we have to hold it there. Okay. We'll be back though with more of this, I'm sure. Stay with us. Heroes is coming up next.